the life of Muhammad's prophet, life of Muhammad the prophet, and this has actually been translated by Guillaume. And here's what he said. So, it's a little different here. The immigrants, that's the subject here, they remained where they were, that is in Ethiopia, which is the same as Abyssinia, until they heard that the people of Mecca had accepted Islam and prostrated themselves. That was because of the chapter of the Star, which is Surah 53, had been sent down to Muhammad, and the apostle recited it. Both Muslim and polytheists listened to it silently until he reached the words, "Have you seen Allat and Al-Uzza?" They gave ear to him attentively, while the faithful believed, that is their prophet. Some apostatized when they heard the Saj was like the interjection of Satan, and said, "By Allah, we will serve them, the cranes, so that they may bring us near to Allah." Satan taught these two verses to every polytheist, and their tongues took to them easily. This weighed heavily upon the apostle until Gabriel came to him and complained. Okay, so this is kind of a little different angle, and he doesn't actually quote it, but he basically, this is fully complementary with the other, to say, well, both polytheist and Muslim both agreed, and they said, well, we'll worship the cranes in order to bring us closer to, worship the daughters of Allah in order to bring us closer to Allah.
Cranes is just another name for them.
The cranes is actually, they flew very high, and it was a metaphor for kind of like angels, intercessors, or goddesses.
Okay, and that crane's reference is going straight to these three goddesses.
Right, and we know it's not regular angels because the goddesses were named.
Right.
All right, Lat, Uzza, Manat.
And they were known by the culture.
Right.
It was pre-Islamic, as a matter of fact.
Right. Now, Ibn Ishaq, he actually mentions the chain of transmission for this, and what he says is that he basically, Yazid bin Ziyad transmitted it to Muhammad bin Ishaq, who translated it to Salama, who translated it to Ibn Hamid, who transferred it to Ibn Ishaq. So he mentions a chain of transmission here, and today we can't prove each one of these was reliable, and Muslims can't prove they're unreliable, but by the common rules of their chain of transmission, if you cannot prove anything against them unreliable, then they generally accept it.
Right.
Okay,
what about this next guy?
Well, the fourth guy, all right, he is a little bit later, and he is actually after the hadiths were collected, Ibn Jarir al-Tabari. Now, he was a Shafi'ite Sunni. Actually, Ibn Ishaq was a Shafi'ite Sunni also, but Tabari, he wrote a 39-volume history of Islam. Now, 39 volumes, that's pretty massive. Okay, so he obviously, had a lot to say. He has been titled the Sheikh of Commentators, kind of a term of respect, saying he was almost like the commentator of commentators. Okay, here's what he says. When the messenger of God, that is Muhammad, saw how his tribe turned their backs on him, his tribe not meaning Muslims but meaning the Quraysh, and was grieved to see them shunning the message he had brought to them from God, he longed in his soul that something would come to him from God which would reconcile him with his tribe. ... And when he came to the words, "Have you thought upon Allat and Al-Uzza and Manat, the third the other?" Satan cast on his tongue, because of his inner debates and what he desired to bring to his people, the words, "These are the high-flying cranes. Verily their intercession is accepted with approval." Or an alternate reading is, "to be sorry to hope for." When the Quraysh heard this, they rejoiced and were happy and delighted at the way in which he spoke of their gods, that is, the positive way, and they listened to him, while the Muslims, having complete trust in their prophet in respect of the message which he brought from God, did not suspect him of error, illusion, or mistake, and ... Then, and that's later, Gabriel came to the messenger of God and said, "Muhammad, what have you done? You have recited to the people that which I did not bring to you from God." Okay, so here this is different words, so he obviously didn't copy it verbatim from anywhere, so, independent source. He says basically the same thing.
Okay, so once again we have four different Islamic writers giving this history about these satanic verses, as they're called, where Muhammad actually spoke for the devil.
Right.
And it also got him some appreciation from the idol worshippers there that didn't buy into his monotheism, but they liked the polytheist idea, and he got more acceptance that way. It was almost like a political move by bringing up these goddesses. He got acceptance from his tribe and everything at the same time. So in a way, from a personal standpoint, I could see how Muhammad, by bringing up these goddesses, which he knew would be appreciated by these idolaters, basically, that didn't accept his monotheistic doctrine, he knew by bringing that up it would get him approval, and it did. And you can almost see how, for personal gain and approval, psychologically he can bring this up, and then he can get these guys on his side.
Right.
And apparently it worked out all right.
Right.
And these biographers here, you might say, these Muslim guys, don't seem to disagree with that.
Yeah, and these are the four major early biographers of Muhammad. I have not become aware of any other biographers of Muhammad at this early time period who didn't say this. All right, so a couple things to note here is that Tabari actually gives reasons for the Muslim response to this. And their response, according to Tabari, is they had complete trust in the Prophet. Okay, which maybe like some Muslims today. Other thing I'll remind you again is that Tabari did live a little bit later than the others. And so the other three, you say, in a sense, are more reliable than the Hadiths because they were earlier, but Tabari was a little later.
But because he was a little later, he had access to the earlier writers who were closer to the event. And obviously he could read Wahidi and the others. Mm-hmm. And then
we don't know for sure if he did or not, but he may have. Yeah.
Right. Possibility. He was later, so those works were probably in existence somewhere there. And he was the sheikh of commentators. Wrote 39 volumes, so he must have had something there to go on when he wrote all those volumes. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying this looks to be a pretty authoritative source of material here from these four writers in the early going. Mm-hmm. Now a guy living 1,000 years later, sometimes you can't quite believe his authority on a subject as much as you can believe somebody that's a lot closer to the event.
Right.
So I'm thinking this looks pretty strong that these things actually happened, because it's not really coming from a Christian or someone that's against Islam. It's coming from people who are for Islam.
Yeah, devout Muslims. Now, there are more Muslim scholars who also wrote about this, but I'll caution you, these guys lived a little later than Tabari. And these guys were Abu Mashar, Ibn Abi Hatim, Ibn al-Muntir, Ibn Hajar, Ibn Mardawa, and Musa bin Uqba. And also Zamakhshari, who is a very famous commentator. You see his name for all kinds of different things. He wrote on this also on Surah 2252. But again, these were written later. And we know about at least these first six, where the source of that is the Book of the Major Classes, translated by S. Moinul Haq. Okay? So this is the direct evidence that Muhammad said these. But we're not done yet. We have some indirect evidence of some, not quotes, but some inferences. Okay, Bukhari died about 870 AD, and an inference of this is in Bukhari, volume 6, number 385. And Bukhari is of all the hadiths that the Sunni Muslims use, Bukhari is kind of the highest in respect and authority. Okay, so anyway, Bukhari says that when the star surah was given, pagans as well as Muslims bowed. Okay, and in all Bukhari, pagans were not said to have bowed for any of Muhammad's other recitations, only this one. Okay, so then the question is, why would they want to bow in this particular one? Especially since Bukhari does not say these pagans became Muslims. So they didn't become Muslims and bow. They were pagans, they bowed and stayed pagans. What was it about this surah that they liked? Well, the answer is pretty obvious, because it did respect to their goddesses. Okay. Also, in the Quran itself, Surah 2252 says, "Never did we send an apostle or a prophet before thee, but when he framed a desire, Satan, through some vanity,